It is 5:48 and time to talk about your money here on Good Morning Quad Cities. But first, let's get a look at the stock market because there are some renewed concerns for the economy today. Because last week, the S&P 500 fell 5.1%, the NASDAQ down 5.6%, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 4.6%. In fact, the Dow Jones has fallen 10 of the last 11 weeks, and the S&P 500 and NASDAQ declined 9 of the 10 last weeks. And we, of course, have Mark Gravicheski here from the Quad Cities Investment Group to break it all down for us. And Mark, none of this really sounds like good news, so I'm interested to know what your reaction is this morning.
Well, literally just a couple of minutes ago, I did check some of the pre-market indicators, and unfortunately, the Dow, the S&P 500, NASDAQ, all set to open significantly lower once again. Now, we'll see how things shake up over the next couple hours once Wall Street officially opens up at 8:30 Central Time. But it's not just about inflation. That's driving this sell-off, but just as importantly, it's what this inflation triggers. To help get this, high inflation under control, the Federal Reserve must now start aggressively raising interest rates, but that poses significant risk to the U.S. economy. Now, historically, when the Federal Reserve starts raising interest rates, David, Wall Street wants these interest rate hikes to be spread out as much as possible to allow consumers, businesses, the economy to better absorb the impact of these interest rate hikes. But because inflation has risen so high, so fast, it's forced the Federal Reserve to basically, front load many of these interest rate hikes now and in the upcoming months. And that sudden shock to the economy from all of these interest rate hikes in such a short, compressed window of time increases the risk of sending the economy into a recession. And that's the concern. Does this economy dip back into a recession? And that's what's causing this 5-6 month decline in the stock market. Yeah, and that's the recession word. It's definitely a hard word to hear. People get a little worried about that. And we're all paying so much more for things right now. So what are what's your expertise or what's your opinion on the current inflation rates? Well, the latest CPI number that came out on Friday really caught Wall Street by surprise. Now, in April, inflation did decline slightly from 8.5% down to 8.3%, and there was this almost, cautious optimism that maybe inflation in March had peaked at 8.5%. In fact, Wall Street was projecting, this latest economic inflation number to be posted around 8.2%. But then on Friday, inflation was reported, not at the 8.2% we had hoped for, but much higher at 8.6%, a new 40-year high dating all the way back to 1981.
So I guess the big question would be, when can we get some relief?
Well, as we've clearly just seen here, trying to predict the peak of this inflation is proving to be somewhat of a challenge. But even when inflation does start to decline, David, expect inflation to decline at a very gradual pace, and inflation is expected to remain historically high for quite some time. Now, the ideal target rate of inflation for the U.S. is around 2%, but inflation is expected to remain, well above that 2% target rate for most, if not all, of 2023, and potentially, David, even into 2024.
So, as a consumer, what can I be doing to ease that burden a little bit?
Well, unfortunately, the inflation, we are seeing, it's just a very, very broad-based rise in consumer prices. Look up here at some of these prices over the last 12 months, David. Meat prices up 13%, eggs 32%.
Don't get me started on eggs.
If you're an omelet eater, I apologize, but it's 32% higher over the last 12 months. But fruit and clothes, a gallon of gasoline, as we all see at the pump, 50% higher over the last 12 months. Home prices, 14%. Cars, 16%. And look, these aren't considered high-end luxury goods and services. Yeah. They're basic, everyday necessities. Yeah. It's food, it's clothing, it's shelter, it's transportation, and unfortunately, for middle class and lower income Americans, it's even becoming a struggle to pay for these basic necessities.
Oh, such a struggle.